Welcome to this episode of The Square. I'm here with David Rose of David Does fame, and we're going to be exploring, see what I did there? Exploring a little bit about Nordic lighting and the trip you went on as part of the Corgan Explore, competition. And so I think it's probably best just to kind of start there. I will say, spoiler alert, David did, how long was the video? 30 minutes?
Yeah, it was about a 31 minute.
Yeah. So David did an incredible 30-ish minute video. We will put the link below. I don't want to rehash everything you did in the video, but I cannot highly enough recommend you go and watch it because you did an incredible job. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, is just a little bit about the story behind your story. And so to kind of set the stage, the Corgan Explore competition, basically people get to submit or do submissions to win the Explore program, and then they get money to go travel, right?
Exactly.
And so what kind of goes into those submissions?
So yeah, there's a few things that you have to include in the submission. You have to include where you're going to go on your trip and why you want to go there, what you're going to study exactly, and the study topic would need to relate to Corgan in some way.
There has to be some benefit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Either to the type of work that we do, or maybe some research that's happening, or an architectural interest that you have that Corgan could benefit from the knowledge that you gain. And then one of the other important items to include in the submission is how you are going to present back to Corgan. And
that was a big part of what you put emphasis on.
Exactly, right.
And you actually lost the first time you submitted, right?
It was brutal. Yes. I was so upset with myself, but I thought, well, the submission I think still has relevance, and it's something I'm still very much interested in. So a few years later, when the Explore application became available again, I just edited down my deliverable, made it more concise, and I resubmitted it, and I won.
So full disclosure, it may have been 2020, not in the last several years, but I've been one of the judges of the Corgan Explore process, and it was always interesting to get to read the different submissions because there's such a variety of how people want to go and delve into a certain architectural principle or whatnot. But the reason I was part of it, having zero architecture background, is because the storytelling that happens at the end is so important. That's the whole reason the Explore, program exists. And so I just want to dive right in because I think it felt like as important as the trip was to you, bringing the experience back to people was equally as important.
Exactly.
So I have to ask, is travel something that you've always enjoyed? Has it always been something that you kind of wanted to do, or was it something that was a vehicle to be able to go and kind of study some of the Scandinavian architecture?
I love traveling. My family and I did vacations every summer to national parks. So I was in elementary school going to middle of nowhere, Wyoming.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? But
back of the station wagon for hours on end.
Yeah. Like, where are we going? We're going to go see rocks? I mean, what? But yeah, I mean, from early on, I think just being able to go to these new places and, take advantage of the beauty that is our planet. And, even within here in the States, I mean, there's so much to see. So I've also done quite a bit of international travel, and I think with that, the big benefit is meeting so many different people that are very different from myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of these individuals I still keep in contact with. There's Instagram friends from Singapore that I'm still connected with, and, friends from study abroad in Australia. I mean, there's just places that I've been to or people that I've met that I'm still connected with. And I think that's the value of travel.
Yeah.
Too, is meeting people and understanding how they are different from myself, but learning from it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about the trip first. Why you kind of focused on the Nordic principles of daylighting, is that right?
Exactly.
And so where did you come across that? how'd you find that?
Yeah. So how my whole trip started was I've just always had an interest in this part of the world, and there's a few key connections for me, and one of them is innovative architecture. This part of the world, Scandinavia, has incredible architecture, and some of the best architects have come from these countries.
Yeah.
And so I knew that there were going to be great things to see there. And so then the next layer was, okay, what exists there that I could examine more closely that you don't see anywhere else, or something that makes the place unique. And what came to mind, and what I've known about, but I formalized it in my application, was specifically daylighting. And because this part of the world, this region is so far north of the equator, there's such a drastic difference in daylight between summer and winter. And so I thought, okay, well, I think there's an opportunity to look at how architecture can connect to daylight. And that's really how the entire trip developed. And then my next layer to all of this is developing what I called a Scandinavian scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
And finding examples of architecture across the 3 countries that I visited, but making it fun and an adventure. And framing it in that way made it really exciting, and I couldn't wait to just jump into it.
And that's where the 9 different kinds of principles of Nordic daylighting came from.
Yes.
I think Luke has a graphic of that we can put up on the screen and show people. So was this something that you found, or was this something that you created?
So once I figured out my topic, Scandinavian daylighting, then I ordered a few books to learn more about it. I felt like I needed the research so that I had the knowledge before jumping in, going to this place. And so there was one book in particular by an author, Henry Plumer. And so I used his textbook as my guide. And so he curated these 9 qualities of Nordic daylighting. I used his definitions as my framework, and then refined his examples to fit something a little more in tune with what I was looking for. So
okay, so that's kind of the principle of the trip, which even at that point, it shows how much work went into being able to win the prize.
Right.
This was not just, hey, you want some money to go on a vacation to Europe?
Yeah.
But I'm curious one of the things that I think stood out about your submission was, like I said, the idea of bringing it back to the firm, which the deliverable part of it is true every year. Like there has to be a benefit to the firm. But you chose to do it in a YouTube video format.
Yes.
Why? I mean, I love video, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, so do I. But I've always been a spectator and never the creator.
Mm-hmm.
And my background is in architecture and graphic design, and specifically the graphic design side. I thought this is a medium that I've touched on briefly, but never have really made a curated documentary, which is really what I made.
Yeah.
And I thought, I think this is, I can do this. It's going to take a lot of training for me to get to the point where I knew I could be successful. But
yeah.
I thought, I think this is the right avenue for me to learn how to do this, how to create videos and do it well, but use this avenue for storytelling and communicating ideas in a way that I've never done before. I've never made a YouTube video before, and I thought, here's my chance.
Yeah. Well, and what I loved about it was oftentimes, and this is not to take away from anybody else that has won this prize and done the deliverable, but oftentimes what comes back is you're experiencing the project only through somebody giving a PowerPoint presentation on what their experience was or the principles that they learned. And they do a great job with it, but because you had the video, you were able to weave in very successfully, I might add, music and B-roll and effects and motion graphics and all of this to give you the experience that you were really on the journey with you. And I will say, one of the things that stood out to me was one of the stuff that you left out. Like, there was gotta have been the temptation to be like, oh, here's my hotel room. Like, it's not the story of your trip. It's the story of your journey through these 9 principles. Like, I don't see what you're eating. I don't see, where your
Hotel shots, my cocktails, those are important.
as any journey needs.
Exactly.
But I love that you kind of focused on this idea of these 9 principles.
Yeah.
What was surprising to you about, like, was it more or less work than you thought it was going to be?
It was more work than I forecasted. But in my development, and I mean, like I said, there are YouTube channels that I have watched for years. And with this Explore trip, I went back to some of my favorite videos and extracted how they actually create the content. And I noticed that there are scenes that lead up to their destinations.
Yeah.
For example, if you're in a city, they are showing video of them on the bus and then the sidewalk and then, approaching the building and then they have arrived.
Yeah.
Versus, you're at one place and then all of a sudden
You jump to another spot. Yeah.
Yeah. You're telling that story of getting to the place, and I thought, okay, that's what I need to also bring to this video that I'm creating.
Yeah.
Have bridge that the pathway or the moments that lead to the next place.
Yeah.
In regards to more work, I think for me it was the video production.
Yeah.
It took a lot longer than I expected.
Yeah.
But I think I also just wanted great quality work from the output of it.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't going to slap it all together last minute. I wanted this to be design focused and artfully curated. And so that just takes time. But
was the I recently, because I don't get to be on Premiere as much as I used to, and recently I had the opportunity to do it for a project we were doing. Adobe Premiere Pro, yeah. And what was that? I mean, because usually as an architect, your tools are Revit or SketchUp or, designing tools. What was that process like, learning and literally editing a story? I'm sure similar to how you think about it in design, but in a completely different medium.
yeah. So I had never used Adobe Premiere Pro before this whole project. And so I started back to YouTube to learn the basics.
Yep.
And there are so many YouTubers that have how-to videos on literally everything.
Yeah, anything you can think of.
Yeah. And so I searched for Premiere Pro, and there were individuals that taught me the basic tools of the software.
Right.
And so then, and I won this Explore trip in May. And so I used June, July, August as training for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I created a video that I made, and David Does Wakeboarding with
Yes.
my test video. And so my poor family had to deal with me learning how to use the footage on the boat and everything. But, it was me practicing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I felt like I was in a good place where I had the tools and I knew my format.
Yeah.
And then as I went on my trip for my Corgan Explore topic, I felt like I knew what I needed to accomplish and what I needed to capture.
Yeah. I loved the David Does, title. And it's
Yeah.
you talked a bit about it a little bit in the lead up to showing the video in the forum, but you had this branding element, which is something maybe not a lot of people realize is happening, but that is like quintessential to YouTubers, right? Is their influencer brand. And so you created this influencer brand, if you will, of David Does, and it's flexible and it's catchy and it's kind of got layers to it. What kind of process went into coming up with that?
Well, the whole thing started from what I call my resume name. So my full name with my middle name is how I use it's on my website, it's on my portfolio. I've just had that logo type for years, probably a good 10 years or so. And when this whole trip came up, I thought, well, of course, I have to brand the trip.
Yeah.
It has to have a visual identity unique to its own. And just from my own development and using the existing logo type that is my name, I just reworked that to fit this trip.
Yeah.
And I love alliteration.
Yeah.
I find ways to make jokes that are alliteration in some way. And then this idea David Does just popped in my head, and I thought, okay, I think this could work. And then, like you mentioned, the flexibility of it where potentially this could work for destinations like I'm using on my trip, Norway, Iceland, Denmark, but then it can also be implemented for things that are not travel. David does wine.
Yeah.
David does cooking. I mean, there's opportunities to use this.
I'm happy to come show with you on David Does Whiskey. I will definitely do that.
Let's do that. We'll do it right here in the studio.
There's a variety of footage, and again, I won't give away too much. But one of the things I thought you did really well was both the variety, but the drone footage. And the drone footage, I think, has been so key, particularly for architecture, because for hundreds of years, people have experienced buildings primarily from the ground, and the drone gives them the opportunity to experience it up close, more personal than a helicopter or a plane would, right, or aerial footage, but in a way that you don't normally get to experience buildings. You see a lot more of what people hide on roofs.
Well, that's
but I know from experience, flying drone in foreign countries can be a dicey experience.
Yeah.
Did you, or at the very least, gather onlookers? Did you have any kind of sketchy moments where you're like, boy, I really hope I get that drone back?
So, yeah, there were a few moments in particular. So I know in Oslo, my friend and I took my drone to one of the public parks, and I sent it up and got some great aerial shots of the city and of the park itself. But it was incredibly windy that day.
Yep.
And I lost connection with it for a split second, and I freaked out.
That's a bit of a freak out moment for any pilot.
Yeah. So thankfully it reconnected and I was able to bring it back. But I did some drone research in these cities before I traveled.
Yeah.
And a lot of these places have strict drone laws where you cannot fly drones within like 50 meters of any building facade, or, within certain city limits. Or I think it was Copenhagen that I'd have to apply for a permit.
Yep.
And that takes weeks. And I thought, okay, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So in those situations, I just didn't fly my drone because I didn't want to risk getting arrested in a foreign country. But
I don't know, the Scandinavian jails may be really nice.
Beautiful furniture in there.
Does the Corgan Explore program cover bail money? We'll have to ask legal.
Yeah. Maybe it's in the fine print.
Well, so I love hearing about the creation of the video, but I do want to talk just a little bit about the trip. I probably one of the favorite places that you visited that I loved and connected with was the Oslo airport. And coincidentally enough, it's this idea, you used it to represent the idea of journey. Tell me a little bit about being in that architecture design and experiencing it while actually on the journey.
Yeah. Well, so the Oslo airport was one of the destinations that I had researched before. So I knew it was on my list and I needed to capture that place.
Yeah.
And the approach as you enter the airport from street level, you first have to go up an escalator onto the public plaza of the airport, which is where this checkerboard canopy exists.
Yeah.
And so there's so much movement in that space and people going and coming and security, and there's a lot of chaos happening at eye level. And so the moment you look up and you see so much natural light coming in, and then the beautiful array of wooden beams, and then the structural columns and the pattern, I mean, it is a peaceful place considering the
amount of stress that goes into travel normally.
Exactly. Yeah. And specifically with Journey, there's a connection of how light can propel movement in people. And so I felt like that location exemplifies Journey so well.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful place.
So you said that there were places you researched ahead of time, obviously. Were there ones that were surprises along the way?
There were. And we'll stick to Oslo because I felt like Oslo, Norway was a gem of great architecture that some I knew about, but others I completely discovered. And there's one place in particular, the Oslo City Hall, which captures the definition of carving. But that one, my friend and I stumbled upon. We were walking down the main thoroughfare along the Oslo Bay, and then I saw this monumental piece of architecture. And I thought, let's just go in here. And I saw on Google Maps that it was the City Hall. And I felt like a part of this was something that I reflected on afterwards, but a lot of the places I looked at were culturally relevant to the place. And I thought, if local architects are going to put emphasis on beautiful architecture, it's going to be these places that really are meaningful to the city or the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so the City Hall is a great example of that. And the artwork in there was beautiful. I mean, everything had purpose and functionality to it. But in terms of the daylighting component, which is what I was looking at,
Yeah.
it was incredible. And so many of the spaces had just tons of natural light coming in. But this notion of carving with the main this notion of carving with the main lobby space and the clerestory windows coming through, it was spectacular.
I loved, I was surprised when I saw I think it was in Iceland, the church that was finished in 89. I was shocked when you were like, yep, and this church was finished in 1989, because it has, again, not an architect, but it has such almost a timeless but just really cool design feel to it that feels like it could have been done in the last 10 years. And it was done, almost 50 years ago.
Yeah. That's the church of Seltjarnarnes.
Yes.
And Iceland has incredible examples of religious architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And this one in particular, I felt was such a showstopper.
Yeah.
And I had looked it up before. This was another location that I knew about in my research, so I definitely wanted to see it in person.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're looking at it on the screen. I mean, it is such a cool place. And I mean, the roof structure is a definitive quality of the building.
Yeah.
But then once you arrive inside and then take in that natural glow of the diffused light within the space, it's amazing. And there, my friend and I went on a Sunday, so church was happening, and we walked into the lobby space, and the manager or the director of the building approached us, and he said, "Are you all here for church?"
Yeah.
You're a little late. No. We're like just looking at the architecture. We're here to take some photos. And he said, "Okay, yeah, no problem. It'll be over in a few minutes, and then you can go right in." And I thought, excellent. So I got to capture all the footage I needed and got to experience it too. Really nice.
I have to imagine being in the presence of this architecture up close and personal in some ways. It has a huge impact, but even more so, being there in the context of the culture has to have had an impact as well.
I think so. And one thing that comes to mind, Brandon, is in Copenhagen, bike culture is so important. Everybody bikes, and that is their primary mode of transportation. And so when we were in Copenhagen, we biked everywhere. And outside of these places, the bike parking dominates more than the car parking. And it's fun to be in this place where I did exactly like the locals do, and connecting to the cultural component of these places as a part of this Explore trip is equally as important. You got to see your topic and research that, but also experience what's important to the place.
Yeah. I have to believe in a world that is going increasingly hybrid, and there's a lot of benefits to it. I'm not knocking it, but there's Matterport, there's VR, there's XR, there's ways to experience literally probably anywhere in the world from the comfort of your own home. But that's still going to be a limited experience. It's still not going to compare to traveling there.
Yeah.
Is there something that stands out from you on the trip that was like, I could not have experienced this without being here?
Well, I think there were a few locations, a few of these sites that I have always wanted to see in person, and I've seen them so many times through photography or through, through online research. But there's one site in particular, the Oslo Opera House, designed by Snøhetta. This is one that I knew I wanted to see firsthand. And
you actually took in a show, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, my friend and I saw a was basically a Broadway show that they had in the actual opera house. But with this project site in particular, there is such an importance on experiencing the exterior promenade, which is the public space, and the building is designed in a way where individuals can walk up the sloping ramp and then be on top of the roof of the building. And so the entire building is the public space. And I keep thinking, if I was just seeing this online, through your computer, and you're missing that experience of the heavy breathing walking up the ramp, or, like the frigid temperatures of Norway.
Yeah.
That all adds to the experience of the architecture.
Yeah.
And feeling the texture of the stone. I mean, there's so much there's so much value in seeing it firsthand than you ever could, through online mediums.
You have mentioned a couple of times the we part of the trip. You had a friend with you. What was it like experiencing that with a companion versus doing it alone?
Well, yeah, I think my big takeaway from this, and I have told my friend about this, that I think having him with me, I did so much more. There was one moment in particular where for our evening activities, we would go and eat dinner, and then lots of times we would bounce around and go see more sites, or go check out a cool bar. And I felt like if I was by myself, maybe I would have done that, but I don't know.
Probably not.
Probably not. I would have gone back to my hotel room and done video editing, probably. But, just having someone there to also to help with the production side of my video collection.
Sure.
And pretty much, I mean, everything most of what is in the movie is my own footage, but he did add some third-person shots of me that ended up being really funny. But yeah, and then in some of our driving scenes, I was driving and he was capturing that.
Yeah.
So I knew I could not have done that myself. That was,
not legally.
Yeah, not legally. So yeah, having a friend there really made a big difference and it benefited the trip in a very positive way.
Probably the coolest experience that I wanted to go and do was, I don't know, it's a tie. I'll give you both of them. One was the ski slope that Big does.
Oh, yes.
On the backside of the, it wasn't a power plant. It was
a power plant.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Hill.
Yep. But people were skiing on it when it's grassy.
Yes.
So I'm guessing they were using special skis of some sort.
So, I don't know. I didn't see the skis up close, but the terrain, the actual slope is, I think it's artificial turf, and then they have grass that grows in between. Yeah, you can see.
Yeah, there it is. Those actually look like regular skis.
They must be, and I think the slope is
so cool
enough to.
That's a great drone shot, by the way.
So yeah, but this place was really cool. It's a functioning power plant.
Yeah,
and then Bjarke Ingels, the architect that designed it, added the additional programmatic element of a ski slope.
Yeah,
and I think it helps to encourage interaction with the building, so it's not this ugly eyesore on the skyline. Instead, it's a fun place that people can gather and, encourages exercise. And
I want to be in that pitch session where he was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a ski slope year-round on the backside of this power plant.
Get ready for this. I'm adding something really crazy.
That's awesome. All right, then the other thing that I thought was super cool, and, I'm not calling you out because I don't know that I could have done it either.
I think I know where you're going.
But the floating sauna seemed super cool. And then I can imagine the temperature shift of trying to get into that water.
Right. So part of Norwegian culture is ice baths.
Yeah.
And like the polar plunge. And so many individuals do it all over the country. And I looked up this floating sauna online and I thought, okay, I have to do this.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I booked it online and we had 2 hours for the floating sauna, and it was literally a floating barge with a sauna component and then a changing room and then basically a diving board. And it was maybe like 40 degrees, 50 degrees outside, but the waters were, probably closer to freezing, and I only went knee deep, and I really should have just jumped because after my quick dip, I went into the sauna, and I mean, my calves felt fantastic. So there's something.
Those were the only ones in the water.
Yeah, like that's all that benefited from it. But I mean, there's so many health benefits to doing that drastic temperature change, and so I mean, I should have just done it, but I don't
know. You said it, again, spoiler alert, you said you were like 150 degrees, and then you go to this, and that water can't be much more than like 40 or 50 degrees.
I know. I mean, okay, next time you're gonna go full plunge.
Yeah, jump off.
Exactly.
Well, I have to ask, and I think I'll give credit to Gabe for the way that he phrased it, but I'm curious, what will David Does do next?
Well, I think the value of the brand David Does is that it is very flexible.
Yeah.
So there's a few thoughts that I've had, and just in the few months after my trip, I've been exercising that brand name a bit, and I'm documenting a lot of the trips that I've been doing within the States, and I did David Does Vegas recently. That was really fun. And then I did this strange fashion exercise where I wanted to try monochromatic looks.
Mm-hmm.
And so every day for 5 days I had the different look. And so I ended up with a video of David Does Fashion, which I don't think that's going anywhere, but that was really fun. So
Paris week.
Yeah, like here I come. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of avenues.
Yeah.
And right now, I mean, the one that I'm really interested in, and I talked about this in my forum presentation, but David Does Wine, I think would be really fun. Where maybe travel to Northern California and bounce around to different wineries. Maybe I could do something a little more regional and do the Texas wineries in the hill country outside Austin. Doing something like that I think would be really fun. I'm sure the video quality would decrease as the footage is captured.
Yeah.
The more wine I consume. But
that'll just all be part of the story.
Yeah, why not? So in terms of a topic a little more intellectual, there's another study that I've been interested in is to go to Japan. And it's almost another explore topic.
Yeah.
But to go to Japan and study their culture there is so visual. Anime and even their own language is built with icons and iconography. And I'd love to study that from a signage perspective and how buildings take advantage of such a visual language that is Japanese, but then how it's a cultural topic too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's something there. I haven't really formulated it, but I might be going to Japan soon. I
have no doubt you'll have ample volunteers to go along with you
come with
and help camera.
Yeah.
David, thank you so much for sharing kind of the story behind the video with us. I highly, highly, highly encourage you. Click on some of the links below. We'll have David's YouTube channel as well as specifically the video that he presented here as part of his Corgan Explore deliverable. And make sure to check out TheSquare next time.